Hello, my little wordlings. I am reviewing the book Goth Girl and the Ghost of a Mouse. This is a cute book. It really is. I'd recommend it anywhere from grade 1 to grade 4 of that reading level. There's a few things in here, though, that you'll see that only older readers will get. And by older readers, I mean like old as fuck readers. Like this one over here.
Yeah, great. I know. I'm old.
So, first off, my husband bought me this book a long time ago because it just kind of fits my aesthetic. I know not right now, I'm wearing pajamas, but whatever, don't judge me. But as you can see, it has the beautiful purple. It has this very ornate design on it with the skulls. And of course she's wearing purple, and I love purple. And one of the coolest things, there's a tiny extra book. And it's called Memoirs of a Mouse, Ishmael Whiskers. And it reads almost like a version of Gulliver's Travels, which I think is pretty much on purpose. So, yes, it's a cute book, and it is definitely for younger readers. And there are pictures in it, and the pictures are amazing. But again, there are references that only someone who's old as fuck is gonna get. And that's where the awesomeness comes in. So let's get into it. I do want to also mention that I didn't do a deep dive into this book because there would have been so many things I would have missed. I took what I could recognize, what I thought was interesting, or anything that looked like it could be something and something that I could research, but I guarantee I have missed so much. And I'm just gonna have to be okay with that. So as per usual, I have my Skull of Knowledge and Miss Bronte helping me with this. And the first part of what I love about this book are the names. And every name is a reference to something. So the first name that was named after a real-life Georgian landscape architect, Capability Brown. They used the name Metaphorical Smith. I want to thank the Wikia for Goth Girl on that one, because I would have never gotten this reference at all. They actually helped me with quite a few references in here. And this is a picture of him in one of his architectural masterpieces. Then we have Little Ben, a clock that was given to Lord Goth. That's obviously a reference to Big Ben. And then we have Lord and Ada Goth. So Ada Goth is our main character. She's the young girl, and Lord Goth is her father. So this is based on Lord Byron. Now, Lord Byron was a poet, just as Lord Goth is, and his daughter was Ada Lovelace. She was a mathematician, I believe. And then there's the cook, Mrs. Beeton. Now, when I was reading the book, I just assumed it had something to do with beating eggs, and I didn't really think much further than that. But apparently it might be based on Mrs. Beeton, who was a homemaker and created the Book of Household Management. So, again, that was from the Wikia, and if that's where the reference comes from, that's pretty awesome. And some of the guests to a party were Hebe Poppins and Van Dyke. Again, very obvious reference to Mary Poppins and Dick Van Dyke. There they are. And Tristram Shandy Gentleman is a reference to Tristram Shandy, the life and opinions of Tristram Shandy Gentleman.
Ah, putain!
The book, I did not make it through, and Tristram Shandy Cock and Bull Story did not make it through. So this one, Mary Shellfish, the lady novelist who wrote The Monster, or Prometheus Misbehaves, very obviously based on Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus. And they referred to her as lady novelist. I think that has to do a lot with the fact that Mary Shelley wasn't very appreciated in her time, and she was mostly known as the wife who wrote something, as opposed to, a writer in her own right. I think I'd have better words for that. So we're out of names. Now we're going to learn something. And even in the children's book, I learned new things. So they drank something called an Elderflower Cordial, which is a drink made with water, sugar, and elderflowers. It sounds beautiful. And then they talked about chimneys. So this is the quote. The ornamental chimneys of ghastly Gorm Hall are some of the finest in the land. The barley sugar, the hedgehog, and the 6 chimneys of Henry VIII are among the most ornate examples. And as you see, I forgot to put my quotation mark at the end of the sentence, but whatever.
I am a learned bitch.
So Henry VIII chimneys are the chimneys from Hampton Court. Now, I don't know why they called it the 6 chimneys, and I'm sure if I did more of a deep dive into it, I might have figured it out, because there are hundreds of chimneys that are ornamental at Hampton Court, as you can see. And then the barley sugar is a very distinctive chimney, which I think looks absolutely beautiful. Now, hedgehog chimney, I could not find any reference to it or what it might be, but there were a surprising number of people who made hedgehog chimney sweep toys and stuffies. So I don't know if that is part of some kind of legend that I am unaware of in England. Maybe someone could enlighten me, but yes, I couldn't find anything that was strictly hedgehog chimney. Now, Rococo was a style of art that they spoke about in the story. It's characterized by lightness, elegance, exuberant use of curving natural forms in ornamentation. So it means it's just fancy. And they talked about a Rococo mermaid. This is the quote. Said William, turning the color of ridiculously Rococo stone mermaid. That is to say, very pale. And so I went with the first one I found because there were a surprising amount of people who do Rococo style art. They are quite ornate and quite lovely. And I do have a link to this particular artist. I also found a style called Corinthian, which is described as opulence, sophistication, and grandeur.
Opulence! You own everything!
Which just describes the cover of the book as well. Like, even the cover of the book, as I showed you earlier, is quite ornate. And this is a Corinthian pillar. Now, daubed. I've heard this a few times, but I've never actually looked up the word. And it means coat or smear a surface with a thick or sticky substance in a carelessly or liberal way. So I've heard the word and my mind assumed dabbed, and I never really went further with it. I'm glad I looked it up. Now it gives more texture to what I'm reading. And this is the quote. Daubed on the walls at helpful intervals were messages with arrows. Here are some more words. So this is the quote. Agnes, fuddle those eggs. Mrs. Beeton roared like an enraged sea lion. Maud, bedevil the batter. No, not that batter, you idiot. Pansy, frizzle those pies until they're piping hot, then frangulate the crust. Quickly, girl. The surface already has a chaotic feel to it, and the way it's written, and you can see enraged sea lion is just an awesome image. But if we break it down, what does each word mean? So if we say fuddle those eggs, fuddle means to confuse. So I would say that in a way it means to beat the eggs. So you're beating them and spitting them into a point where they're just absolutely confused and mixed together or mixed up. So that's how I understood that. And then bedevil means to cause continuous trouble to. So maybe it means mixing again. So you're mixing it until you're not letting it sit or rest for too long. That's how I would interpret that. And then frizzle means to fry. So it also gives you an idea. So they're not just pies that you put in the oven. And I assume because most of this has a lot of English references or references to the UK, then it's not like an apple pie. It's one of those handheld pies that you would eat. So that would make more sense to frizzle the pie as you're frying the pie instead of baking it. And then frangulate, I couldn't find an actual translation or meaning for that, but it might be from flagellate, which means to whip. And if that's the case, then I'm picturing it as quickly hitting the crust to get those little markings around the sides. And these are my interpretations, but even with those interpretations that I have, it gives this whole sentence so much more life. And it already had life to begin with, but now it has your imagery and it has your sense of panic in it almost, because everything is so violent. You're not just frying them, you're frizzling them. You're not just beating the eggs, you're fuddling them. So it adds to that panic and that confusion of the whole kitchen must be feeling during this scene. But again, because they're decided to use these words, it is up to interpretation of how you're going to perceive this scene in the kitchen. He's a good writer. Now let's get to the pictures, because even the pictures have literary merit, believe it or not, and you'll see what I mean. So if you notice at the bottom, and again, actually, before we even get to that, I'm pointing at my computer screen right now as if you can see what I'm pointing at.
Stop it. Get some help.
So you see like the little ornate designs with the skulls, and even the font used fits all the architecture references that they were using. Now, certain points in the book, there's footnotes to tell you more information about a person or a thing. They literally put a foot next to it with a pen and call it a footnote, which I think is adorable. And it says here, this book contains footnotes by the severed foot of a famous writer who lost the aforementioned foot at the Battle of Württemberg-Baden. There we go. I'm not telling you how many times it took me to say that out loud. Okay, so this is Lord Goth, and if you think he doesn't look like Prince, then you need to go Google Prince, because that's all I see when I look at this. It's just amazing how I keep going back to the word ornate, and I think the author would be very disappointed in me because he had so many more pretty words to describe the architecture.
You absolute imbecile!
So even this, this is Mrs. Beeton in the kitchen. And I'm sure there's other references here I'm not getting, but the oven being called Dante's Inferno is just beautiful. So as you can see, even in a children's book, you can learn a whole lot. And the references are for people who like reading, who remember little things that they learned from school, or things, if they enjoy trivia, these are little bits of trivia, anything from architecture to history to literature, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And I am very happy that I read this book, and it will be in my room that I have painted black and purple as a display piece as well, but I couldn't just let it sit there, I had to read it. So I hope you all have an even brain day, and I thank you for joining me, and I will see you later. Bye!